You are, and forever shall be, the Batman.
Golden Stallion doesn't even wear underwear. You're not changing my world. Who's crazy now saying that someone didn't want entire lives and everything you do and all the forms of government, not governance, government getting put onto the blockchain? Who's crazy now? I am terrified of replacing the gun with the code. Pardon me a moment of arrogance, but I'm a fucking genius and I can't keep track of all the shit that's coming out of the of blockchain technology. I can't. And then when they say, well, but they're backwater. How could they be backwater if they have SIM cards and they're switching them around? People don't even know how to do that in the United States. And you say they care? No, they don't care. If they cared, if they had a lick of compassion, they wouldn't say near certainty that no civilians would be killed or injured, or they wouldn't try to minimize civilian casualties. They'd walk away and say, no, if anybody innocent has a chance of dying, we don't fire. We don't do it. But they do it anyway. They don't care about you. Who can possibly say that all this is okay? Who can come out? What person, what wonderful statist can come out and say, yeah, no, we have to do this? How are you going to change the world if you can't get your message out to anybody? Well, we have a website. Your website looks like everybody else's website. Your jingle music, your jingle ding, 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 is the same thing on every goddamn corporate video out there. You're a joke. Yeah, and I'm worried, too, because I think there's a lot of philosophically inclined people who would say, well, you have a problem with my Google Glass? I don't think you're being vulnerable enough. What? What do you mean I'm not being vulnerable enough? No, I'm telling you to get that camera on my fucking face and leave me alone. The ultimate of rights, if there are rights, the ultimate of rights is leave me the hell alone. That's what this is all about. Woo, baby! That right there was, now that's actually not very new. That is old. That was from episode 100 of Sovryn Tech. And I got asked, they said, baby, Golden Stallion, could you play that one again? Could you play that for my 12-year-old son? And I said, baby, you got it. And I'm not kidding either. Oh, I got this email this morning. And of course, it is Saturday morning. We got a very unholy black Shabbat going on right now. And it was lovely night for intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy's laughing there. But anyway, it is June 10th, in case you're wondering. But I looked at my email this morning, and this father, who's a listener of this show, tell you what, how about I read this action for you? How about I read it for you one time? Let me pull it up fast. I mean, I literally almost broke into tears. Okay, I gotta be careful with the word literally, figuratively, blah, 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 whatever. I gotta be careful with all my terms. Anyway, I'll paraphrase in this way. It doesn't reveal identities and everything. I listen to podcasts when taking my 12-year-old son to school and when bringing him home. Sovryn Tech gets put on repeat a lot because he is absolutely convinced that you, the Golden Stallion, are some kind of superhero rock star saving the world. His friends' parents are concerned about him, constantly saying he's an anarchist and tries to get everyone to listen to the show. Whoa, I cannot imagine if he got this 12-year-old kid, got his friends, got little Johnny to listen to Sovryn Tech, and then suddenly he starts hearing, oh, I mean, I'm so sorry. Anyway, reading out the email, you probably weren't expecting a 12-year-old to be one of your best marketers. Daddy, you're right. I was not expecting that, but this isn't the first time. I know I've got 8-year-olds. I can't believe that. I've got 9-year-olds. I've got all kinds of, there's lots of kids that listen to the show and I'm going, holy shit, what am I doing? But at the same time, tell me you don't feel a little hyped up. Tell me you don't feel a little hope for the future when you hear that kind of shit, right? And this kid wants my music because, of course, I compose my own music for my little work that I do with Audio of the Ancients and some other things. Oh, man. Like I said, I was almost in tears reading that. It was so beautiful. Anyway, woo, we've got a great show to get in, to get here for you. And of course, again, that same person asked for, they wanted to hear that intro again for episode 100, which you can just go to SoundCloud and listen to episode 100. But hey, I'll put it in. I'm here for you, baby. I love my listeners, even the little guys. Absolutely. And the little gals and the little various invited transgender species. You better believe it. So, all right, let's get into this. I'll tell you, This morning, I also ended up, pretty much in tears, over very sad news that we will be talking about during the climax. I mean, we really, I remember I went to IO9, this morning, and I just felt like I got a swift kick to the gut with a POW symbol next to it, right? And you know what I'm talking about. Adam West passed away, at the age of 88 due to a very short battle. And I'm glad it was a short battle, honestly, with leukemia. And, boy, longtime Sovereign Tech listeners, I've talked about the original Batman series probably as much as I've talked about almost anything else. Like last year, there was that great Return of the Caped Crusader. Anyway, I'll save it for the climax. We'll talk about it there. We don't want to get all sad now because I've actually got in some segments of the show, we're going to get into some good news. Woo! We've got some wild shit to talk about here. And some things that I've been promising to talk about for some time that I really want to get into. So anyway, let's get into the foreplay right now. So I'm going to open up the foreplay, talking about generations. It's kind of like that poor kid. No, I really am honored by that. But anyway, talking about, generation things. I had a great Sovereign Tech listener and genuinely actually a great friend. One of the people I really consider to be a seriously great friend. He sent me, he shared something with me, and it was called a Xennial. Xennial. And I just want to share this with you. It's not exactly tech, kind of science. I mean, whatever, but this explains a lot. And actually, I think it has a lot to do. I think it's very relevant, to tech in general and to a point that I've made many a time. So what is a Xennial? A Xennial is, I'll read it here, a microgeneration born during the cusp years of Gen Xers, Generation X, and millennials. For example, between 1977 and 1983. Now, here's the amazing part. I'm reading right from this. Or when the original Star Wars trilogy was released. Can you believe that? Like literally, they're basing this entire concept of a generation on the time frame within which Star Wars was the biggest thing happening on the planet, which I find to be remarkable. Because, of course, Sovereign Tech listeners know I'm a huge fucking Star Wars fan. In fact, we did a great Star Wars update on Patreon. And boy, if you're not checking out, well, I'll mention the sponsor later, but if you're not checking out our sponsor, Resist the Empire podcast, to get that Star Wars and Liberty all wrapped up in, one nice little love burrito, you got to check that out. But anyway, so from 77 to 83, I was born in 81. The friend that shared this with me was also born within this time frame. I think he's a little older. But anyway, Xennials experienced an analog, this is reading on with it, Xennials experienced an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. That's a key point. One more. Possess both Gen X cynicism and millennial optimism and drive. And my friend shared it with me and he's like, it's you. And I was like, yeah, it's me. Holy shit. And then he said, it's us. And I'm like, yeah, it's you too. This was such a huge realization. In fact, I mean, we've talked about this. I know, the lovely and hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I, we talked about this on Sex and Science Hour at one point, where they have broken down pretty much, you have, cause millennials, there's a problem, right? Is that millennials, not that it's not too broad of a generation spectrum, because it's no different than baby boomers or Gen Xers or anything like that, but that there seems to be two types of millennials. There's the millennials that had a bit of time where the internet didn't exist, and then there's the millennials that, grew up with the internet in full force and everything. Now, the original millennial cutoff is 1981. So technically I was a millennial, or I am a millennial, depending on if anyone wants to accept the definition of Xennial, right? So, but I think that this is such an important, I don't know if it's just Xennials and the dates aren't exactly, set in stone or anything like they kind of are with, with millennials and Gen Xers and everything. But I've said this before. the people that are going to save the world, maybe make that little kid's dream come true. The people that are going to save the world are the people that grew up without the internet and then experienced the internet and were able to like learn it and interact with it as it was being developed. Like the people that really understand kind of the original way that the internet was, etc. But like the people that the half and halfers, okay, they're the ones that, because they know what the world was like, what it is, but also I think with that unique perspective, what it really can be like. And it's not knocking anybody. I just think that is such an important perspective, a perspective. I mean, people talk about this with generations all the time. Generations that experienced World War I, they have a very unique perspective. Same with World War II, same with all kinds of eras where people probably had very unique perspectives. So I think this concept of the Zennial, I imagine a lot of Sovryn Tech listeners are in that generation. You're a Zennial just like me, which is probably why you dig the show, because you better believe I've got a ton of Gen X angst. I mean, if that doesn't put itself on fucking display every episode, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I guess I'm listening to myself wrong, or I'm not hearing what I'm actually saying. But I do, at the same time, that millennial optimism and drive, even though everybody, I think, thinks that millennials are depressed or something, which there are many that are, and I completely understand why. But yeah, I absolutely have optimism. In fact, we're going to talk about some of that optimism later on in the show. So I just thought that was fascinating. The Zennials, it's a micro generation born kind of between Gen Xer and millennial, and they just have this like really unique perspective. And I love that it was tied in with Star Wars. I thought that was fascinating. So anyway, let's move on to the next bit in during the foreplay here. Something I want, well, you know what? This is actually, I want to let you know about this. And I've been checking it out again, a piece of software that I have been recommending. Now, this is only on, desktops and laptops. It's not on mobile phones. In my opinion, that's a fucking good thing. But anyway, it's called RetroShare, RetroShare. Okay. RetroShare. I'll put a link in the show notes for it. This is such an impressive piece of software. If you've never heard me talk about it, I really should make it just a tool of the week at some point. Again, it already has been, and I've talked about it many times. But for the Sovryn Tech patrons on Patreon, and if you're not a patron yet, just go to sovryntech.com. You can become a patron. All you got to do is at least $1 a month. Many people do a whole hell of a lot more than that, and I'm honored by that. But at least $1 a month, you get access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content, new content every week, tons of perks. One of the perks is we do have an actual Sovryn Tech patron. I didn't set this up, because I don't, especially right now, I don't have the time. But an actual Sovryn Tech patron set up a RetroShare. Because RetroShare is like this internet alternative software, or World Wide Web. It's more than World Wide Web because it replaces SMTP. It can replace IRC. It's just this one piece of software that you put on your computer, and you open it up and it can do everything. It can send emails. It's all encrypted. It can do emails. It can do IRC. It can do, effectively torrenting because it does have distributed hash tables. It can do all kinds of wild shit. File sharing. I mean, huge files. You can do VoIP calling. You can like effectively do Skype with it. It can really do everything. It's such an impressive little piece of software. I've been talking about it since Sovryn Tech started. But nobody ever really got on board with it. But I know I have a lot of new listeners now. So anyway, we have a Patreon RetroShare set up, to where you can get access to it. You get the public key, you put it in. I mean, it's not everybody. Well, I know some basic users, I think that have gotten hooked up with it. So it's gotten a lot easier. It's like a version 0.6. It's still very actively developed. And what you can get on there is all the things that I talk about on this show, like Babylon 5 or some music or whatever, like all the different like stuff that maybe you want to get your hands on to download or something. You can get access to it through that. Consider it like a lending library. I'm going to describe it like that. Wink, wink. Got me? Okay. So moving on. And I'm not going to say where any of this content happens to live either, but you can get access to it if you become a patron. But I just want people using RetroShare more, and so if you want a good excuse to get on it, become a patron and you can get access to our little RetroShare cabal, that is honestly just a lot of fun and just it's such great software. Everybody's always asking, well, where's the decentralized future? Where's all this stuff? I talked about it years ago. And it was RetroShare, and you can install it right now. The thing is, oh, it's not on your mobile phone? Oh, I'm so sorry. Your mobile phone's a fucking block of sensors, okay? Like, if you're wanting to communicate, or if you wanted to do a whole ton of things, not just like, say, text somebody, because then obviously Signal's great. You don't want to use your mobile phone for that. Oh, we might get into that a little bit more later. Anyway. So I thought that, I was really glad that patron stepped up to the plate and, made that available, but do check out, become a patron and you get access, on RetroShare. It's, just a really, really slick stuff. So, okay. Now, obviously a huge deal that happened this week was, WWDC. Apple had their big event. There are things to talk about. Okay. It's not like a major event where anything that was said was some kind of grand vision for the future. Like at Google's events, there seems to be this grand vision for the future. At Microsoft's events, they're banking big on creativity and on creating kind of the AR, VR, or MR, like Windows MR, mixed reality, situation. They're trying to put that together, to give people the tools to create this virtual future, blah, blah, blah. So there's things to talk about there. With Apple, I don't think there's that much to talk about. There were some plays, some things announced that lent itself to a very interesting, augmented reality play by Apple. But I'm still, kind of doing my analysis and research on that. So I'm not going to talk about that here. It does seem at least they have it in mind. We'll see what happens. But probably the most exciting thing that came out of that, and I mean it, like I saw this thing and I was like, whoa, what a nice fucking computer. I put Windows 10 on it right away, but what a nice looking machine. And that was, they announced the new iMac. In fact, it's the iMac Pro. So it's not just the iMac, but the iMac Pro. And this is literally a workstation class device. 27 inches, has a 5K display, just like the iMacs of previous years, have had the past couple of years. No touch. What a shock. That's probably the one thing keeping it from being a really great Windows 10 machine because to compete with like, say, like the Surface desktop, right, would be the fact that, because you have the Surface dial. I mean, Microsoft's playing big on touch, and Apple seems to be sticking to their guns that they're not really interested in ever putting touchscreens on their devices or on their computers, which is ironic considering that they really do a great job with touch on, their iPads and their iPhones. So why the fuck not put it on your? I mean, I don't like touchscreens. Don't misunderstand me. I just recognize that kind of the direction that a lot of the I guess a lot of the software market or whatever, the app market and all this stuff is really looking at touch. And I just think it's kind of stupid, to not even make that available to creatives, to developers and whatever else. And I think that's why a lot of people are running over to Microsoft's Surface line because everything has a goddamn touchscreen on it. Even though I'm not the biggest fan, I don't really have anything against it. It's just, it's a matter of preference, but they're not even giving you the choice. So anyway, but the iMac Pro it has the 5K screen, 27 inch. Obviously it's an iMac, so everything's all in one. That's been the nature of the iMac since 1998 when I got my first iMac. Up to an 18 core processor. Now this isn't Coffee Lake. This is a Xeon that they're putting in there, which is what makes it, workstation class. And I think it was either last week or the week before when I talked about that, because now, okay, so this, let me finish up talking about this computer. Then we'll get into Coffee Lake a little bit. But it offers anywhere between 32 gig to 128 gig of RAM. Woo! 1 terabyte or more of solid state, with a solid state drive, storage there. And it has the Radeon Pro Vega 56, with 8 gig of dedicated RAM. And then it has 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports. Holy shit. Now, they did update their MacBook Pros a little bit and their MacBook lines. They put Kaby Lake processors in them, whatever. Okay. Nothing really to write home about there. They didn't fix the dongle problem or anything on that. That iMac Pro, that, in my opinion, was the star of the show. Okay, there's still one other device that they announced that probably everybody's like, oh, this is the thing to talk about. No, I thought that fucking iMac Pro was the thing to talk about. I mean, it is a gorgeous computer, and that is a lot of fucking balls. That is a lot of power. I mean, it costs starting or I think fully maxed out, it's $5,000. I don't think it starts at $5,000. But maxed out $5,000. But I think that's a computer worth $5,000. I mean, for especially when you're getting that Apple quality, because, whether you're an Apple fan or not, I readily admit, in fact, speaking of iMacs, my 98 iMac that I mentioned, that still works. That still runs. It still does things. So, you're hashing out $5,000 for, a gorgeous computer that could potentially last you forever. So that's totally worth buying an Apple, even if you didn't want to run macOS on it. But I think the iMac Pro is the real winner here. I think all that power, it's not a waste. I mean, if you're into, like CAD and all this different stuff, yeah, I get why you need that power. But I mean, this is a gaming rig just dying to be messed with, especially with that 5K screen and, the Radeon Pro Vega ready to run that, ready to run any game that you kind of throw at it. But then Mac has, you have Steam on there, but kind of Mac games on Steam are sort of an afterthought, and still Windows is the ultimate, gaming, platform, just straight up. Now you can run Boot Camp and you can put Windows 10 on it, but that's the thing. I'd put Windows 10 on this thing so fast, it's just a shame it doesn't have the touchscreen. But anyway, yeah, so this is obviously the purpose of this getting released. We talked about it, I think it was last week, how, 2 months ago, Apple said, well, yeah, we're going to come out with a new Mac Pro, our new desktop. Right now it looks like the trash can, right? But it's going to take 15 months. Obviously, this is an in-between thing for the, people that need a workhorse. And this is pretty good. I'll give them credit. This is pretty good. I'm going to guess that now it's going to be 13 months, 14 or 13 months when there's finally a Mac Pro. I'm going to guess that that's going to have probably a Coffee Lake processor in it, because I can't imagine what it takes to cool that fucking Xeon running 18 cores inside of that little, in that very thin, iMac chassis. Oof. So, I don't know if they're pulling any throttling down stuff or what they have going on. But I'm just saying it's a gorgeous machine. Like, if somebody asked me, what's a great computer to buy? I've got $5,000 to burn. I would buy this one in a heartbeat. I don't know I don't think Mac OS really could take advantage of all the power that it has. Windows 10 could. And if it's a Linux machine, I don't think it needs that much power. So, I don't know if I'd get it if I was just going to run Linux or something. But anyway, yeah, kudos to Apple for really putting together a beautiful piece of hardware. Now, speaking of what else they released, this is well, they did announce, of course, a new version of Mac OS, High Sierra. Puff, puff, pass. They even during the keynotes and everything, they were cracking jokes about smoking weed, about lighting up. They knew what they were doing. High Sierra. Oh, jeez. Anyway, the other thing is the Apple HomePod. Of course, this is a direct competitor, to, even though they're trying, I think, to differentiate it, but a direct competitor to what Amazon's doing with the Echo, to, what Harman Kardon is doing with Cortana and Microsoft, and, to the Google Home, right? And they're trying to differentiate it and concentrate it on being an Apple Music interface or device. And it, the thing is, everybody's this is so funny. Everybody's talking about, okay, you read all the reports about the Apple HomePod. Oh, the sound is amazing. In fact, I think one quote was, the Apple HomePod sounds like an orchestra and the Amazon Echo sounds like you're listening to AM radio. That's the way they're comparing the speakers. Yes, the Amazon Echo does not have the greatest speaker on planet Earth. This is true. And believe me, I don't support any of these things. Like, I don't give a shit about any of them. It's all IoT, and IoT is the death knell of any technological developing that we've done and any interconnectivity that we've done. If you don't believe me, October 21st, 2016. That's all I got to say. So, the day the internet died. But, the HomePod, here's the thing, like, okay, nobody owns one of these. Nobody's actually put it in their house. So it sounds, let's be clear on this. The Apple HomePod, the speaker sounds really great in perfect conditions that Apple has set up at WWDC with the perfect music, the perfect audio that they all pre-selected, blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, it's perfect conditions. Of course it's going to fucking sound great. I can think of acoustic setups where the Amazon Echo could sound like, you know, like a Bose wave system or something. So that's kind of bullshit. Okay. You know, that the Apple HomePod, oh, the speaker. Oh, yeah, they're full of it. It's absolutely perfect conditions that you're dealing in there. Now, you know, is this device going to have more Siri kind of going for it in the future? This is a huge conversation to be had. Because one of the things they said, yeah, you're going to interact with Siri with it. And one of the things that Apple tried to address with the HomePod is privacy. This is something that Apple has very much as an entire company has been hanging their hat on for some time, especially since the FBI case, saying we don't sell off your data to advertisers. I don't believe that, but whatever, that's their claim. You know, and do they need to? No, that part's true. They don't need to make money as a company. All they need to do is sell you the hardware because they sell it at a premium and they make premium devices, you know, like I said. But that's all they need to do. That's why they don't have to charge for the OS really anymore or anything like that. I mean, it's okay. You know, yeah, you don't have to sell off to advertisers. I'm just saying I don't believe that they don't. But regardless, so they're big on privacy. And they said, you know, one of the concerns was, when is the Apple HomePod listening? Because that's what everybody freaks out, rightfully so, or not everybody. I wish everybody did. What I freak out about with these, you know, fucking, you know, assistants in a can, like the Amazon Echo or Google Home, you know, how often are they listening, right? And with Amazon, you know, you have some admission to how often it does that it's listening, you know, at various points. I mean, because by its nature, it has to be listening all the time because it has to be listening for the wake word, right? Be it Siri or, you know, the wake word for the Echo, you know, or for Google Home and so on. So what happens with all of that data that gets collected? Now, Apple made it a point to say, we're only going to collect Siri data, or we're only going to collect, you know, voice data from the HomePod for 6 months. After 6 months, it gets deleted, or not that they're going to collect it for 6 months, but they'll hold what they collect for 6 months and then it automatically gets deleted. Now, there's an inherent problem with this that people aren't really talking about. And that is that you're really setting up the Apple HomePod for failure. Okay. And there's two arguments to make about this that I think are very interesting. Now, do I agree with, like, the idea of Apple not holding on to my data if I had a HomePod or whatever Apple device I had? Well, fuck yes, of course. No, I don't want you to have my data. Okay. But here's the inherent problem. And then there's another argument. Okay. Here's the inherent problem with this is that Cortana, Google Home, and the Amazon Echo do not follow that rule. Because they don't follow that rule, they will have years worth of data down the line as to where, again, Apple's going to delete everything every 6 months. They're going to have years worth of data to where they can improve the Echo, you know, well, I'll say it, Alexa, where they can improve Cortana, where they can improve Google Assistant or Google Home, whatever. And they're going to have like a bunch of metrics that they can collect on how things get used. They're going to be able to improve their virtual assistants. Apple is literally is absolutely setting up Siri for failure because it doesn't have all the, you know, it doesn't have as much data as the other virtual assistants have. Now, two things, well, a couple other things. So potentially Apple's lying. And they're going to collect it anyway, and they're going to keep it anyway. And there's really no way to know if they really delete it or not. I mean, that's true for tech companies across the board. That's not just Apple. Okay. But, you know, you don't know if they're going to get rid of this, you know, get rid of that data. And, you know, the other aspect of that is, well, again, I mean, Siri's just not going to be able to interact with you as well as it normally would because it doesn't have like your entire history. Okay. As to where the Echo, Cortana, and Google Home do. Now, the flip side of this, here's the irony, okay? And this is kind of strange. This is sort of a new thought to me, kind of a new argument to me that I'm still chewing on. I'm still working it out. And the argument goes like this, is that, yeah, one could kind of make the case that Apple really does give a shit about privacy. And that's why you find a lot of big executives and, people that you would think would have a lot of, would really need to take, I think everybody needs to take security seriously, but we're talking about people of degree of merit and whatever that really need to take security seriously, really need to, be concerned about privacy, et cetera, whatever, high powered individuals, whatever you want to call them. Okay. I think that there's a reason that they go with that. It's not just status symbol. It's like, well, they have they have security teams that are telling them, no, you should be using Apple products because they actually give a shit and they do security pretty well, which we talked about this recently. I mean, even with, what was the leaks, from WikiLeaks, the Vault 7, Apple was the one that, they weren't perfect, but they were the closest one to smelling like a rose coming out of that whole situation. So yeah, Apple's really good at security. That's, no argument for me, on that. But here's the funny thing is that because Siri, by the very nature of the fact that they don't keep data, is going to be an inferior product, you're pushing, potential HomePod buyers into the ecosystems of Echo, Cortana, and Google Home. And by pushing them there, you're actually, this is kind of how the argument goes. You're actually making the world less private, which would seem antithetical, right? Because wait a minute. No, it's better if Apple doesn't keep the data, right? Isn't it better if people aren't keeping the data? Then of course it's more private because the data is not out there. Not actually, because what it comes down to is the question is, who do you trust most with your privacy? What company do you trust most with your privacy? Do you trust Amazon? I wouldn't. Do you trust Microsoft? They're doing pretty good against the DOJ, admittedly, but do you trust Google? Well, fuck no. I don't trust Google with shit. Do you trust Apple? Like, which of those companies do you trust the most with that? And if somebody said to me out of those four, like if this were the choice, and you could say maybe it's like a false dichotomy or something, but, or a false choice, but, out of those companies, which one would you trust the most? If somebody said Apple, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I understand why you say that. Like, I don't really blame you, for thinking that way. But what company out of those same four is actually going to give you the best virtual assistant experience? It's not going to be Apple, just by the nature of the fact that they're deleting your data every 6 months. And the other three companies will keep it willy-nilly, always available, ready to serve you. Do you get my point? So pushing people away from Apple is almost making the argument could go is that pushing people away from Apple's ecosystem, like with the HomePod that doesn't keep your data, is actually making the world overall less private because it's going to companies that aren't as good as securing your privacy. You see? So that's an interesting argument. I'm still kind of chewing on that. I'm still thinking about that. I get it. I understand the point. Really, the ultimate option is don't fucking buy these fucking tin cans, virtual assistants. Just don't get any of them. Don't buy into Harman Kardon shit with Cortana. Don't buy the Google Home. Don't buy the Echo. Don't buy the HomePod. Don't get any of them. And just keep those, that little can of microphones away from you, as much as you can. So, yeah, but it's stuff to think about. So Apple could really be hurting themselves with the fact that they're not keeping data. And, roundabout, if everybody kind of gets on board with these, these little virtual assistants, or assistants in a can, maybe that's what I should start calling them. Yeah, we got a problem. So anyway, I want to move on from that. So the HomePod, it's definitely the way they were marketing it was towards Apple Music, which is a smart move on their part because, Apple and music, they're synonymous. It is the direction to look at that. Next thing, this was actually sent in from a great listener. And I thought that this was very interesting because it proves something that I said was going to happen. Now there's some speculation as to what exactly this is, but there was kind of an announcement, some papers, some memos going around about what's called an advanced Windows 10 Pro. It's like Windows 10 Pro for Enterprise. I think that's the full name of it. And they're talking about so here's the question is this really just Windows 10 Enterprise rebranded? Because, and this is dumb that Microsoft has this. They have so many different SKUs. They have so many different little versions of Windows 10. that it's hard to tell what actually has what features. So, but this is being sold to enterprise, and it's on a subscription model, which we already knew that Microsoft was offering Windows 10 enterprise on a subscription model, which is what I said. So my prediction is that eventually, because like pretty much you can get Windows 10 for free, more or less, you can get Windows 10 for free forever. Okay, especially if you use like that, where you have a disability or something, and you're using tools for, ease of access and whatever. But, I said it's like sooner or later, Microsoft's going to be releasing features to where you are going to end up paying for a version of Windows 10 that only has those features. It's going to be a subscription model and you'll pay out for that. But then everybody else that's on kind of the free version of Windows will have effectively an inferior product. This is really pointing in that direction. This advanced version of Windows 10. So yeah, I called it. There it is. and I don't have to say that. I'm not boasting. The listener that shared it with me said, whoa, you were right. So there, I'm just quoting him. And really, some people are saying that this is just Windows 10 Pro or Windows 10 Enterprise, kind of rebranded, that it's really not an advanced or like a pro version or something. But other people are saying, no, this is going to have very unique features that are only available to it. And so, yeah, and will this eventually get into the consumer space to where there's unique features that if you pay a subscription fee for your operating system, which I think is fucking mind-boggling and ridiculous, could that happen down the line? Yeah, I think that's going to happen down the line. I've been predicting that for years now. Really ever since Windows 10 was announced and kind of the business model that they were planning for Windows 10 was announced. I was thinking about that. Yeah. So Windows 10 Pro for workstation PCs. That's what it's called. But again, some people are saying it's just Windows 10 Enterprise. We'll see when it's more out there if there's any actual features added on, but it's definitely looking like exactly what I predicted to where, yep, there's going to be an advanced version of Windows 10 that you are going to have to pay a subscription fee for. Right on. So anyway, thank you for sending that in, making me aware of it. Some of these things, feel free to still send me stories, even though I mainly save a lot of the listener interaction for Patreon. Sometimes I miss shit. We've got another story that was sent in by a great listener, actually by a great friend as well, that I'm going to be getting into. So, feel free to send me stories and maybe I will get to them. So yeah, Windows 10 Advanced. Maybe this will be, implementing the features from Midori, Windows Midori that I've talked about in the past and actually written about if you look on my, Medium page. But anyway, let's get into some other stuff really quickly, just to be conscious of time. Google apparently has canceled Andromeda. Now, what is Andromeda? Nobody really knew. The assumption is that Google was looking to combine, Android and Chrome OS, which has seemingly been a flop because Android apps getting released on Chrome OS has not worked out very well. There's been all kinds of problems. Maybe that'll change in the next year, but the idea was what people thought Andromeda was this fusion of the two. And now whatever it is, based upon insider notes, it's not actually, it's been killed. Also, I just heard this, yesterday, was that Google is selling off Boston Dynamics, which is one of the scarier purchases, that people felt that they made because, Boston Dynamics it's a robotics company, which had to deal with, like military contracts and everything. Really, really creepy shit. So I think that's fascinating that has happened. But yeah, Andromeda, there's not a whole lot to say other than maybe this whole Android / Chrome OS merger isn't going to happen. Of course, we now know about the real-time operating system, that being Google's Fuchsia, which you can look at, because it's right on GitHub. You can look at the code for it, but maybe Andromeda got killed off because Fuchsia is becoming a thing. I've talked about Fuchsia in past episodes. Please do listen to past episodes of Sovryn Tech if you want. Because I like to think every episode's evergreen and every episode really builds on top of each other. Not to say new listeners can't just jump on board and roll with it, but if you want to confirm what I'm actually saying, and if you want to confirm my predictions, like with, that advanced version of Windows 10 that you have to pay for, or pay a subscription for, you can be the Bereans and check on me. Okay. I'm an atheist, but my Christian listeners would know a thing or two about the Bereans, I'm sure. So anyway, Andromeda gone. the other, personally, what I think, I don't know that it's necessarily fuchsia because we don't know what fuchsia is going to be about, but I think Google is really going, I think I talked about this on a Patreon episode where Google, they said it at Google I/O, and they said it previously, that they're not a search first company, they're an AI first company now. And they're really going for zero UI. So coming out with a new operating system with a new, GUI and everything, why? Like that's a waste of company resources if you're just trying to have everything go into quote unquote artificial intelligence. I have problems with that term, but you can listen to past episodes. Well, we're going to get into talking about AI here in a minute. So I think really that's probably why Andromeda got canceled. Whatever it was actually going to be, it's going to be some kind of operating system, some kind of project, but probably because of the new push for going to zero UI. Something else like why it's odd that, they just suddenly sold off Boston Dynamics, like I said, as soon as they lost Andy Rubin, who's now doing his stuff with Essential, which I won't have time to get to this week. But Andy Rubin seemed to be the big guy behind robotics with Google, and now it looks like Google's kind of getting out of that. So a company really shifting right now, I think. So anyway, that's it as far as the foreplay for this week. The rest of the stuff I think I will save for later in the show. Just little notes that we can make. But we'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Got your story of the week coming, and it's a doozy. Hey, whoa. I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, but if you didn't hear me about it then, I want you to check out a podcast. Are you a Star Wars fan? Oh, shut the fuck up. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You know you are. And if you're not, hell, I want you to listen to this podcast even more because it'll make you one. It is so damn good. That is Resist the Empire Podcast. Go to resisttheempirepodcast.com. It is one of my favorite podcasts out there. I really appreciate that they're a sponsor of the show. It is such a high-end production. Such great stuff talked about. It's one of the best. I listen to a lot of Star Wars podcasts. A lot of them are pissing me off. I'll tell you one that does not. That is resisttheempirepodcast.com. These guys are delivering every single episode. They have a lot of fun. They do a lot of unique things with the show. Like they do very unique character analysis, kind of political character analysis with it. They do one per episode. It's genius. All kinds of cool stuff. And you get all your latest news. You get reviews of, books, comics, shows, all everything you could want. If you love Star Wars, and you get that liberty-oriented perspective, okay, which is really rare in Star Wars, go for it. ResistTheEmpirePodcast.com. We thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech.
Story of the week.
Woo! Oh boy. Yeah, we're gonna break this show up into segments, no doubt about it, because I've got so many things I want to cover, and I've been wanting to do the new segments for a while, because the new segments will allow you, if you're wondering where the intros are, just be patient. Trust me, there's a reason. The Lord Sovryn works in mysterious ways. But anyway, with the segments, I feel like it'll give me the opportunity, or with more segments, there's going to be a lot of segments in this episode. It'll give me the opportunity to give you things to walk away from the show with more, instead of just thoughts or things to be, terrified about or whatever. Even though this might be what I'm about to tell you about for the story of the week, might be the ultimate in terror. Or according to at least some people think that way. But there's a lot of theories that you have to buy into for this to become a terrifying prospect to you. And what I'm talking about is Roko's basilisk, or Roko's. I don't, maybe it's Roko's, but I've always called it Roko's basilisk. And this is a concept from 2010. So, and it was on there's maybe not so well known, but very popular forum called Less Wrong. Okay. Think of it as like a 4chan for people that are like really, really technical, analytical, a lot of techno-futurists, and all of that. I've certainly spent some time on it. It's a hell of a place. You definitely get some pretty wild ideas, there. But its primary concentration, is on futurism. There's a lot of people on there that are really big on, the singularity, on artificial intelligence becoming a thing. Part of the reason I don't really frequent it much, any longer is that I don't really buy into a lot of what they have to say. But anyway, Less Wrong. Yeah. Kind of a famous thing. A lot of big names hang out on there though. Absolutely. It's pretty much a think tank. There's entire institutes really tied to it. In fact, the guy that created, Less Wrong, Eliezer Yudkowsky he runs the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, which lots of people have, certainly been boosters of that, including Peter Thiel, Ray Kurzweil. I mean, Yudkowsky's, a big deal, especially when it comes to a lot of the, academic discussions really around AI. If you've never heard his name, well, remember it because it's a big one out there. So anyway, I'm going to read a little bit from an article that talks about Roko's basilisk. And, well, because, I mean, there's a lot there's a lot of theories that we got to break down, and there's a lot of stuff that we want to get into. But this is the concern that, like, an AI, I mean, in putting it basically, this is the concern that there's an AI already in the future that is actually controlling you right now to kind of bring it into existence. It's sort of like Skynet, but it's Skynet on an omniscient level, not where it's just Skynet sending back a Terminator. It's where Skynet is, like punishing you in the future and like potentially even killing you, then resurrect. I mean, like this is really fucked up. Why don't we let's start reading it. Okay. Okay. So here we go. One day, less wrong user Roko, or maybe it's Roko, postulated a thought experiment. What if in the future, a somewhat malevolent AI were to come about and punish those who did not do its bidding? What if there were a way, and I'll explain how, for this AI to punish people today who are not helping it come into existence later? In that case, weren't the readers of Less Wrong right than being given the choice of either helping that weren't the readers of Less Wrong right than being given the choice of either helping that evil AI come into existence or being condemned to suffer? You may be a bit confused, but the founder of Less Wrong, that being Yudkowsky, was not. He reacted with horror. Now, stallion breaking, and understand, like, a lot of people on Less Wrong, again, and these are a lot of brains, brainy folk, they really believe this. Okay. In fact, I mean, the story, we'll talk about it a bit, but it was banned to be even talked about. You didn't talk about Roko's basilisk at all on Less Wrong. You just, every post would get deleted that brought it up. I think the ban got lifted in 2015, finally, which there's an interesting concept around that because, this idea of this future evil AI that's affecting the past. Again, that's the basics of it. It's interesting that in 2015, the ban gets lifted because 2015 is really when like stories about machine learning and a lot of the books, kind of like Nick Bostrom's and some other stuff really start, more popular stuff about AI started hitting stride. So there might be some kind of, connection there, but well, anyway, let me read on. So this is Yudkowsky's response to the concept that there is this future AI that is affecting the past and is punishing anybody that isn't working towards bringing that AI into fruition in the future, to guarantee its existence. Kind of a Terminator scenario, but a little different. Anyway, let me read Yudkowsky's reaction. Listen to me, and this is his reaction to Roko. Listen to me very closely, you idiot. You do not think in sufficient detail about superintelligences considering whether or not to blackmail you. That is the only possible thing which gives them a motive to follow through on the blackmail. You have to be really clever to come up with a genuinely dangerous thought. I am disheartened that people can be clever enough to do that and not clever enough to do the obvious thing and keep their idiot mouths shut about it. Because it is much more important to sound intelligent when talking to your friends. This post was stupid. Yudkowsky said that Roko had already given nightmares to several Less Wrong users and had brought them to the point of breakdown. Yudkowsky ended up deleting the thread completely, thus assuring that Roko's basilisk would become the stuff of legend. It was a thought experiment so dangerous that merely thinking about it was hazardous, not only to your mental health, but to your very fate. Now we're going to Stanley breaking in. If you're confused, we're going to get into some background here, okay, to understand what's going on. But believe me, people are really terrified about this, and I think people were, and maybe still do, have genuine nightmares about the whole situation. Because just thinking about it, just typing it out on the internet, do you get where this becomes a problem, or, why Yudkowsky reacted so strongly? I'll give more background here in a second. But he reacted very strongly because just typing out the concept could have given this AI in the future, which would have had, which potentially has access to the entirety of the internet, saying, oh shit, I got to make sure that these people actually bring me into, this is the AI thinking. I need to make sure that people actually bring me into existence, because, what if they don't? And so it creates this blackmail situation. And that's why Yudkowsky was freaking out, because he's saying, look, you should have just kept your mouth shut. Don't type this shit on the internet. Don't go telling people about this, because the AI, I mean, fuck, especially if you have, your Apple HomePod nearby, the AI is going to hear you and it's going to have that data later on in the future. Maybe with the HomePod you wouldn't, because it would get deleted in 6 months, but supposedly. So anyway, let's get into some background. These are the thought experiments. This is kind of the game theory that freaks people the fuck out, but relax, because the Golden Stallion is going to tell you that, like, there's one part of this that doesn't really gel, and debunks the whole thing. So, all right, let's do this. Some background is in order. The Less Wrong community is concerned with the future of humanity, and in particular, the singularity, the hypothesized future point at which computing power becomes so great that superhuman artificial intelligence becomes possible, as does the capability to simulate human minds, upload minds to computers, and more or less allow a computer to simulate life itself. The term was coined in 1958 in a conversation between mathematical geniuses Stanislaw Ulam and John von Neumann, where von Neumann said, quote, "The ever-accelerating progress of technology gives the appearance of approaching some essential singularity in the history of the race beyond which human affairs as we know them could not continue," end quote. Futurists like science fiction writer Werner Vinge, or whatever, and engineer author Kurzweil popularized the term, and as with many interested in the singularity, they believe that exponential increases in computing power will cause the singularity to happen very soon, within the next 50 years or so. Kurzweil is chugging 150 vitamins a day to stay alive until the singularity, while Yudkowsky and Peter Thiel have enthused about cryonics, the perennial favorite of rich dudes who want to live forever. Quote, "If you don't sign up your kids for cryonics, then you are a lousy parent," end quote, Yudkowsky writes. Okay, there's so much to unpack even right there. So, one thing. Yeah, I agree. I'm in agreement with Yudkowsky. Cryonics is a very important field. It's definitely something I'm a huge supporter of, and something I think people need to take very seriously. I'm not going to say, you're a lousy parent if you don't get your kids, a sign up with, some kind of cryonic, company or whatever, and they are out there. But whatever, I think it's an important thing to consider, something that definitely interests me, and that I'm totally on board with freezing myself, at that point. But again, I don't really plan on dying. So here's problem one, okay, is that there's the assumption based upon something from the 50s, and they're being very particular in what quotes they pull out here, like the quotes from von Neumann. The thing is von Neumann said a whole hell of a lot more than that, okay? Von Neumann made it very clear that they thought back in the 50s, and in the 60s, they thought that within 7 to 10 years, and this is back in the days of Marvin Minsky. Well, I love Marvin Minsky. He's died, unfortunately. But anyway, they thought then that within 5 to 10 years, AI would be a thing. Then, you're barely talking about the time of the transistor, like vacuum tubes are still all the rage, and they thought that they were going to have AI. Look at where we are now, and we don't have AI. I mean, some people want to argue, like Stephen Grand and some others, that, well, AI is actually already here. We just don't recognize it. I can appreciate those arguments, but I'm not 100% on board with those yet. That's still research that I'm doing. But understand that these guys were saying AI would be, available then. And that's why I call bullshit so much on a lot of what Kurzweil has to say. Particularly if you ever read the book, and I did, that came out in 2005, The Singularity is Near. A lot of his predictions in that, I think there's been a lot of massaging of his predictions, because I know a lot of the ones that he talked about in that have not come to pass. And he was talking 5-10 year timelines, and we're in 2017, baby. This is another part. I talked about this a bit last week, that I don't know if an AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is this AI that they're describing here that could, simulate life itself, if it's ever even going to be a thing. Because, the scientists have been dead wrong for decades now. Since 58, they have been wrong on when it was going to finally, be a thing. So anyway, whatever. That's just what I want to say on that. So there's problem one with the entire notion of Rocco's basilisk. Let's read on a bit here. If you believe the singularity is coming, I don't, or at least at the moment, I don't, and that very powerful AIs are in our future, I know I'm going to get punished by Rocco's basilisk. One obvious question is whether those AIs will be benevolent or malicious. Yudkowsky's foundation, again, the Machine Intelligence Research Institute, has the explicit goal of steering the future toward friendly AI. For him, and for many less wrong posters, this issue is of paramount importance easily trumping the environment and politics. The environment and politics. To them, the singularity brings about the machine equivalent of God itself. Now understand, the story I'm reading from, I think is from 2013, 2014. It's a few years old. So this is before Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking and Bill Gates and all those, started their foundation for making sure that AI is kind of a friendly AI, or where they're trying to get into IA, which is intelligence augmentation, where you improve humans to combat AI, which is an interesting concept in itself. So reading on, yet this doesn't explain why Rocco's basilisk is so horrifying. That requires looking at a critical article of faith in the less wrong ethos. Timeless decision theory, or what's called TDT. TDT is a guideline for rational action based on game theory, Bayesian probability, and decision theory, with a smattering of parallel universes and quantum mechanics on the side. TDT has its roots in the classic thought experiment of decision theory called Newcomb's paradox, in which a super intelligent alien presents two boxes to you. So Stallion breaking in again. So, what you're going to get here is kind of a metaphor where, with Newcomb's paradox, that has to deal with meeting like a super intelligence that's alien. But what they'll do is with Rocco's basilisk, they'll apply it to AI. So there's a point, to why they're talking about it, why they're talking about Newcomb's paradox, which has to do with a kind of a different creature, when really it's not that different. The whole concept is just dealing with super intelligence. So the alien gives you the choice of either taking both boxes or only taking box B. So picture two boxes, box A, box B. Something's in box A, something's in box B. Okay, that's Stanley breaking in. All right, reading on. If you take both boxes, you're guaranteed at least $1,000. All right, so in box A, there's $1,000. If you just take box B, you aren't guaranteed anything. But the alien has another twist. Its supercomputer, which knows just about everything, made a prediction a week ago as to whether you would take both boxes or just box B. If the supercomputer predicted you'd take both boxes, then the alien left the second box empty. If the supercomputer predicted you'd just take box B, then the alien put $1 million in box B. Okay, so in box A, to break this down for you, in box A, you have $1,000. In box B, you have the potential for either nothing or $1 million. Now, this alien's supercomputer, through maybe something like Asimov's psychohistory or something, right, figured out whether or not you would choose box A or box B, or if you choose both. If you choose both, then you get $1,000, because there won't be anything in box B if you choose both. If you just choose box A, you just get $1,000, but you kind of know what's in box A. But if you just chose box B, if you took it as an article of faith, you'd end up with $1 million. Okay? So that's Newcomb's paradox. That's how it starts off. So let's read on a little more. So what are you going to do? Remember, the supercomputer has always been right in the past. Right as in what choices get made. This problem has baffled no end of decision theorists. The alien can't change what's already in the boxes from a week ago, right? So whatever you do, you're guaranteed to end up with more money by taking both boxes than by just taking box B, regardless of the prediction. Of course, if you think that way, and the computer predicted you'd think that way, then box B will be empty and you'll only get $1,000. Again, the $1,000 that's in box A. If the computer is so awesome at its predictions, you ought to take box B only and get the cool million, right? But what if the computer was wrong this time? And regardless, whatever the computer said then can't possibly change what's happening now, right? So prediction be damned, take both boxes. But then, okay, so they're saying, what's the safe bet? Take both of them. That way, at least you get $1,000, because you don't know what the computer predicted. But then, the maddening conflict between free will and godlike prediction has not led to any resolution of Newcomb's paradox. And people will call themselves one boxers or two boxers, depending on where they side. And the person saying, my wife once declared herself a one boxer, saying, I trust the computer. TDT has some very definite advice on Newcomb's paradox. Take box B. But TDT goes a bit further. Even if the alien jeers at you saying, quote, the computer said you'd take both boxes, so I left box B empty, nya, 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 end quote, and then opens box B and shows you that it's empty, you should still only take box B and get bupkis. I've adopted this example from Gary, or whatever. Anyway, the rationale for this eludes easy summary. But the simplest argument is that you might be in the computer's simulation. In order to make its prediction, the computer would have to simulate the universe itself. That includes simulating you. So you, right this moment, might be in the computer's simulation, and what you do will impact what happens in reality or other realities. So take box B, and the real you will get a cool million. So the point that's being made here, okay, and then we'll get back to what this has to do with Rocko's Basilisk. I hope I'm not confusing everybody. The point that's being made here is that the theory goes, you might be actually, for this alien supercomputer to know which box you're going to choose, either the one with $1,000, or if you're going to choose both boxes and end up with only $1,000, or if you're just going to choose box B that would have $1 million in it because it's the only one you chose. Otherwise, again, it would have nothing if you chose both boxes. Okay. That computer simulation, you might actually be the you in the computer simulation that the alien supercomputer based its prediction upon. Okay? So it's saying, go ahead and choose box B, because that way, at least, even if you end up with nothing, you just might be the one in the computer simulation, and the real you in the real world that the prediction is supposed to be applying to will end up with $1 million. And so, you help the real you out, and effectively you won whatever makes up you, but I mean, that's getting into, can you simulate the entire universe, blah, blah, blah. I mean, again, it's even with TDT, there's a lot of things that you're really assuming here. So, all right, what does this have to do with Rocko's Basilisk? Let's get into that. What does this all have to do with Rocko's Basilisk? Well, Rocko's Basilisk also has two boxes to offer you. Perhaps you right now are in a simulation being run by Rocko's Basilisk. Then perhaps Rocko's Basilisk is implicitly offering you a somewhat modified version of Newcomb's paradox, like this. So instead of box A with $1,000 and box B with either $1 million or nothing, depending upon your choice, box A has devote your life to helping create Rocko's Basilisk, help this AI come into fruition and become its servant. Or box B, which has either eternal torment, because you're not choosing to help out this future AI, or it has nothing if you chose both boxes, right? Just like you did with the 1,000 and the million. So Rocko's Basilisk has told you that if you just take box B, then it's got eternal torment in it, because Rocko's Basilisk would really you rather take box A and box B. In that case, you'd best make sure you're devoting your life to helping create Rocko's Basilisk, because should Rocko's Basilisk come to pass, or worse, if it's already come to pass and is God effectively, again, we're talking about an AI here, of this particular instance of reality, and it sees that you chose not to help it out, you're screwed. You may be wondering why this is such a big deal for the less wrong people, given the apparently far-fetched nature of the thought experiment. It's not that Rocko's Basilisk will necessarily materialize or is even likely to. It's more that if you've committed yourself to timeless decision theory, okay, that's TDT, then thinking about this sort of trade literally makes it more likely to happen. After all, if Rocko's Basilisk were to see this sort of blackmail gets you to help it come into existence, then it would, as a rational actor, blackmail you. The problem isn't with the basilisk itself, but with you. Yudkowsky doesn't censor every mention of Rocko's Basilisk because he believes it exists or will exist, but because he believes that the idea of the basilisk and the ideas behind it is dangerous. Now, Rocko's Basilisk is only dangerous if you believe all of the above preconditions and commit to making the two-box deal with the basilisk. But at least some of the less wrong members do believe all of the above, which makes Rocko's Basilisk quite literally forbidden knowledge. So anyway, I could stop there. There's more kind of in the article, but then it just gets into the guy's personal opinion. So here's the problem. All right, there's two clinch pins. Would that be the right word to use? There's two clinch pins here, two things kind of holding it together. All right, one is that there's even going to, like, that an AI, an AGI, this future AI that could even affect the past, something like a Skynet is even possible. I would argue right now, I don't think so. Okay. So there you go. I guess I chose box B. I chose Eternal Torment and Rocko's Basilisk. I don't feel tormented. In fact, quite the opposite. Woo! So anyway, I mean, it kind of reminds me, like, when you think about it that way, like, okay, so if there's this AI in the future that's affecting you in the past, and, you're constantly getting screwed in the past, or constantly, negative affectations happening to you. I mean, it's sort of like, well, if there's a God who'll swallow me whole right now because I spoke out against him, and it never happens, right? So I kind of feel like that almost puts the kibosh on the notion anyway. I mean, unless your life is supposed to be that much greater. But anyway, this is, people into decision theory, game theory and all that. I mean, this is the stuff that they're gaming all the time, that they're thinking about all the time. But then the second part is accepting this notion of TDT. Okay. Of, timeless decision theory. And the best way that I can really explain TDT is it's kind of like the notion that, there's an old saying, if a man thinks he's going to die in 24 hours, he'll probably make it happen. That's TDT. Okay. I mean, that's in basic, in a nutshell, saying that if you're thinking that it's going to end up becoming a thing, just thinking it starts to make it come into fruition. It's not the law of attraction or like making something out of nothing. It's your intentionality that is, kind of bringing it on. Like in the case of the guy who thinks he's going to die in 24 hours, maybe he's going to be a lot less, he's going to be so nervous, he'll cross the street when he shouldn't, and he'll end up getting, hit by a car because he's so scared to death that he's going to die in 24 hours. When if he didn't know that he was going to die in 24 hours, maybe he never would have died. He wouldn't have been nervous and wouldn't have run out in front of traffic. You see what I'm saying? So, TDT, I don't buy that. Like, I don't think humans operate that way. And a very simple, way of going about, I think disproving TDT would be social media, would be Facebook. People just don't remember at all. Okay. And in fact, now that there is kind of a memory bank of sorts that you can access with Facebook, like say where, it says, 1 year ago, like remember each day gives you memories. 1 year ago, you thought about this. How many of you, I mean, just do this to yourself, go to facebook.com/onthisday if you're on Facebook. And if you are, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry for myself. And you'll see, and like, you probably made some kind of resolution or something like this, and it just none of it happened. Like you'll probably look at it and go, oh yeah, well, I totally forgot about that. I never took action upon that. I can see this all the time where there's thoughts that I had that are relevant to things that I should be talking about or that I'd be talking about now that I just absolutely do not cross my mind in any way, shape, or form, and they'd be so helpful if I did remember them. So that's the thing. Timeless decision theory is really bullshit because human memory doesn't, even unconsciously doesn't really work that way with so many concepts that you think about. And I could give a million examples as to why this is. But yeah, so Roko's basilisk, the whole notion here, I mean, like it sounds really scary, right? And there's certainly a lot of people who really do buy into it, but understand that these people that buy into it, they're accepting a lot of initial premises. They're accepting TDT. They're accepting that the singularity is inevitable, which how can anybody make that claim? Especially with the evidence presented. If you're basing the inevitability based upon what other scientists have said, and what they've worked on, well, it's not here. Arguably, I mean, there's arguments that it's close. Then there's arguments that it's not at all. The arguments that it's not close are effectively saying that the arguments made that an AI or the singularity is close are redefining terms and are, kind of like massaging the data to make it look like there's something more there than what actually is. So no, I don't stay up at night about Roko's basilisk. Humans do not function in the way that just what they think, puts them down kind of a path, or just what they think will have something, kind of come into creation. I mean, how many projects, I know I have projects that I've never completed, that just never come into fruition. I mean, they never do. How many people do that have died? So that's the thing. Like this really doesn't, and then they say, well, maybe it's because it's on a mass scale. Like maybe, because it's a bunch of people thinking kind of the same thought that's what guarantees it, to come into fruition more. No, that's easily debunkable too. In fact, one of my favorite cases, is from the 90s where, Garry Kasparov, one of the greatest chess players ever, who was beat by quote unquote an AI. It wasn't exactly an AI. It was just a machine really good at chess, from IBM, of course, was it Blue? No shit. I can't remember the name of it. See? But Garry Kasparov, he played a game where he took on 10,000 human beings around the world. Now, these 10,000 human beings had one goal: beat Garry Kasparov. And they couldn't. Like that outcome didn't come into fruition. This is one of my major problems with things like Augur, where you get into wisdom of the crowds. The wisdom of the crowds is bullshit. Because, I mean, that's kind of the other thing that you have to buy into. There's so mmany different ideas you have to buy into to where Rocco's Basilisk, this, concern of a future AI that will, that will do everything it can to make sure it comes into fruition, just doesn't gel. It doesn't fly. It goes against the very nature of humanity, the human condition. Like, it stands in contrast. The theories required are, humans aren't computers, folks. Okay. They're just not. They don't, like, once something's imprinted in their circuits, it really doesn't affect their future. Like, I mean, not necessarily in a meaningful way. So anyway, that's Rocco's Basilisk. I actually had somebody ask me to want to talk about that. And so, yeah, I think the whole notion is just fucking bullshit. So we'll be back with some more Sovryn Tech right after this. Woo! Wow. Well, let me tell you something. Maybe something that future AI couldn't control, you want to get your hands on. How about some gold and silver, baby? Ooh, I'm not kidding. Go to Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Get your hands on some precious metals, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, all of it. Hell, maybe the robot needs that or maybe the AI needs that to build itself. And if it's in your hands, it can't get it. Woo! So get your hands on that. You can use Bitcoin. They are a cryptocurrency preferred business. They want your Bitcoin. They know it's real money. Jump on it. Diversify your wealth. Get your hands on some of that cold storage, especially with Bitcoin's price being so nice. Go for rrbi.co. Let them know the Golden Stallion sent you, and we appreciate Roberts & Roberts Brokerage sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Let's get back to the show.
Game talk.
Woo! Time for some game talk. Boy, after that, I hope that wasn't depressing. I mean, unless you buy into TDT and you buy into the singularity and everything, then I guess, I'm sorry, I just gave you some nightmares with old Rocco's Basilisk. But I like to think that I fairly well debunked it. Again, I mean, you got to buy into so many things for it to be so. So I'm going to end up skipping HackSec because it took us a lot longer to talk about Rocco's Basilisk than I expected. So let's get right into game talk. And there's a few things I want to discuss. Game talk, of course, is we talk video games because, as I've said in the past on the show, Game Talk is a returning feature to the show. It's a returning segment. I take segments away and I bring them back all the time. Like every 25 episodes, I like to change up the show. But like I've often said, I am, as far as how do I identify, I am a gamer first, historian second, and I am a tech journalist third. So gaming is number one for me. So I always love getting to talk about it. A couple interesting things to bring up. If you were excited about the NES Classic, but you're wondering, hey, maybe could I get this for Genesis? Now, a bunch of these have kind of existed. There was like the Atari ones. There have been some lackluster ones. In fact, I talked about them on Sovryn Tech, that were claiming to be like Sega boxes, kind of like the NES Classic, where it's this, mini box that has classic, a selection of classic games on it, whatever. Particularly in the case of the NES Classic, and apparently there is going to be a Super Nintendo Classic. But anyway, but there has been an announcement for this summer. There's going to be a Sega Genesis called the Flashback. And they are really going to town on this. Lot of great games included for it. Phantasy Star, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog, Altered Beast. That's up to you if you consider that a great game. Mortal Kombat. I mean, there's 85 games, I think, in total are going to be on here. Virtua Fighter 2, absolute classic. But it will be coming out. It's going to be able to do 720p, which that's nice. And one of the problems with the NES Classic was that Nintendo, for some Satan-forsaken reason, they had really short cables on the controllers. This will actually come with two wireless controllers, 2.4 gigahertz wireless controllers. They won't be infrared. So that's interesting. The only problem there is I know some microwaves actually kill the 2.4 gigahertz band. So you might lose control if you're playing in the kitchen, which the lovely, hyper intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy and I do. But actually this September, it'll be coming out. So something to keep your eyes on, if you want that. But I mean, yeah, you're going to be able to play Genesis games in HD. And it's by At Games, but Sega is officially licensing it. So I think that's pretty slick. A little link in the show notes for that if you want to check it out. The other thing is I got an email, and I want to wrap this up fast. I got an email this week from Atari. I'm on their newsletter. I don't know how I ever ended up on it, but I know I did. For something called the Atari box, and they're being really mysterious about it, but I'm guessing it's in the similar vein to the NES Classic and probably the Sega Genesis Flashback. But if you go to AtariBox.com, you can sign up for updates on it, but they're not saying what it is. And there's like a little video that's showing off what appears to be an Atari 2600. I'm guessing it's going to be something like that, where you could, but fuck, you could put every Atari game, on Honestly, you could almost put it on the entire thing on a 3.5 inch floppy. Atari games take up no space whatsoever. So that'll be interesting to see. I'll be keeping you posted on that. But what I really wanted to tell you about, for Game Talk is a game that it's a sequel to, this is really impressive shit. In fact, Konami knows it exists and they don't do anything about it. If you're a fan like me of the Castlevania series, there was this great fan-made game called the Lacard Chronicles. Okay. And it's actually called Castlevania the Lacard Chronicles. And Konami obviously doesn't mind because they haven't taken this down yet. But they came out with the second one. So it's Castlevania the Lacard Chronicles 2. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous Castlevania game. It has, relatively updated graphics, certainly in your Super Nintendo range, but a lot of more advanced features in it. But it plays and has kind of the story style of a lot of your classic Castlevanias. Not like the ones for Game Boy Advance where you hit the cards and everything, which I love, like Area of Sorrow and all that. I love those games. It's not at that level, but it's just kind of an updated version of what you would get, with classic Castlevania gameplay. And again, kudos to Konami because like Nintendo, you had, what was that Pokemon Uranium version? You had that Metroid, that updated version of Metroid 2 that came out, which both, especially the Metroid 2 game, was AM2R or AMR2 or whatever. They got taken down almost instantly. Like Nintendo just, instantly sicked the lawyers on them, on the developers of that, which they weren't selling the games. And this game's totally free as well, the Card Chronicles 2. But they wouldn't have it. So, but Konami doesn't seem to be minding the fact that the Lacard Chronicles exist and that they're, go ahead and slapping on the Castlevania name. I love the Castlevania games, especially the simpler ones. It's such a fun style of gaming. And especially playing simple games as well. And this has a pretty cool story to it, too. It's not dealing with the Belmonts, it's not Simon, the Belmonts. They're the main characters of most of the Castlevania games. But it brings in kind of a new family, the Lacards, and yeah, I think it's a lot of fun. So check out Castlevania. The link is in the show notes for it, episode 229. Check out Castlevania the Lacard Chronicles 2 if you love that classic Castlevania play. This is a full-on game, not a demo. This is the real deal. Works on Windows PCs, of course. Check it out. I'll be back with more. We don't have to what? What do you mean you don't have to take your clothes off? What a bunch of Okay, no, you don't have to take your clothes off to have a good time, but come on, we all want to, don't we? Who writes lyrics like that? I can't believe it. Anyway, let's get back to Sovryn Tech.
Album of the week.
Woo! Ho! How about that little, that little in between? That is a classic little ad that I used to run. It's not even an ad. It's just supposed to be kind of a little bit of a joke, that I ran for years on the show that would just kind of go in between and people were like, whoa, where the hell's this music coming from? And then suddenly, I'd break in and everything. Had a lot of fun with that. But it is time for Album of the Week. Whoa, this is something that Sovryn Tech patrons knew was coming because I was doing it for them beforehand. There was such high demand for me to talk about new albums that come out because really, how do you find out about, new, interesting albums, that get released? I have a hard time finding out about them. In fact, the best way I find out about them, honestly, is by, and I'm not saying I torrent them, I'm just saying on torrent sites is usually where I find out about a lot of, because I'm into a lot of classic bands, and, there aren't a lot of publications, there's Guitar World, I guess, but there are not Guitar World, Guitar Magazine, whatever, that Blabbermouth, I guess, that cover like some new releases and everything, but it's so hard to find out what new albums are coming out, whenever, especially when you're a fan of the music that I'm into, which is, a lot of hard rock and heavy metal, even though recently, thanks to the inimitable NK Lords, my horizons are broadening significantly, I have to admit. But yeah, so Album of the Week is going to be a segment where I'm going to tell you about an album that you might want to check out. I don't know if I'll always play music from it. I'm not going to in this case. But I think it's something fun, something for you to check out, for you to listen to. I know a lot of my listeners are fellow metalheads. It might not always be metal that I'll bring up, metal or hard rock. I kind of consider them the same family. But in this case, it certainly is. And this is a bit of metal that I think is really, really cool. And the band is called Tokyo Motor Fist. Now, it's not exactly a new band. I already have a lot of these Album of the Weeks lined up, like what I'm going to talk about, and a lot of them are totally new bands. Tokyo Motor Fist, I mean, yes, it is a new band, as in, like, these people haven't played before, but you're getting some real class acts and some classic acts involved with Tokyo Motor Fist. And also their album that just came out in December is it's a self-titled, so the album's called Tokyo Motor Fist as well as the band. But you're getting one of the greatest, in my opinion, one of the greatest metal singers or hard rock singers, whatever. I'm just going to say metal from now on. One of the greatest metal singers of all time, that being Ted Poley, who is best known for his work. He's done solo work, but is best known for his work with Danger Danger, one of my favorite bands out of the 80s and early 90s. Not saying every album they ever did was great, but certainly their first two, Danger Danger and their follow-up were both just badass fucking albums. And the follow-up is Screw It, right? Anyway, Tokyo Motor Fist. So you've got Ted Poley on vocals. Automatically, makes for, like, okay, I have to hear this. But then they have, and this is a band that doesn't even appreciate the kind of level. You might not have ever heard of Danger Danger. If you haven't heard of Danger Danger, though, it's a good bet you've never heard of this band, because they don't even have the same amount of recognition, that being Trickster. Trixter. I'm a big fan of Trickster. They had a couple of huge albums, or not huge. I'm sorry. They're not huge. They're huge in Japan. A couple of albums that had moderate success, in the early 90s that I really enjoyed. And this is that kind of that hair metal style. I don't like the term hair metal, but whatever. But the lead guitarist from Trickster, that being Steve Brown, is also in this band, and you feel it. This is a slick album. If you like kind of that melodic metal style, and with the melodic vocals, where it's not, where it's somebody actually singing. Not that I have a problem with the, that's fine. And I like the heavy stuff too. But this is the album you've been waiting for. In fact, honestly, like, if you know about Danger Danger, because I've talked about Danger Danger in the past on Sovryn Tech, this is like a Danger Danger album without Danger Danger, being the name on the album. It opens up just wild with Picking Up the Pieces. Great little ditty, where it's, just has that upbeat tone to it, and kind of a fast rocker, A lot of these are kind of love songs. because the next one after that is Love Me Insane, which is pretty cheesy, but it has a good kind of rolling beat. In fact, you can really hear, for me, the inspiration of kind of Japanese, sort of the Japanese preference when it comes to, like, 80s metal, which that's a whole subject in itself that I could talk about sometime. So check it out. If you like that kind of classic 80s, 90s, kind of hair metal that has a bit of cheese to it, Tokyo Motor Fist, you can't go wrong. The whole album's great.
The most incredible television event ever, as you join the crew of Battlestar Galactica.
Right here, you creepy crawly. I have led the entire human race to ruin.
The last of mankind, fighting for life in a hostile galaxy.
Most of us are dead.
Alone, with only one hope, Battlestar Galactica and her crew.
There is no other destination.
Commander Adama, Captain Apollo, the intrepid Starbuck, and the dazzling Athena, searching for a new and peaceful world.
May as well live for today. We might not have many left. Let the attack begin.
A new age of high adventure, Battlestar Galactica.
Tool of the Week.
Woo! Bringing out a lot of classic ads. And we'll have some new ones, of course. I like doing that. We're talking about things that maybe people never bothered to watch before from the past. Boy, I could go on forever about this. Maybe I'll get into it during the climax, but really, like, I feel like today, nobody's really interested in watching great television. They're just interested in what's on Netflix. Like, they don't actually care about, like, great art. They're just like, okay, what's conveniently on Netflix? And I get it. I understand why, but that's kind of annoying to me, especially when you have, torrents. Anyway, tool of the week is where this is a segment that I've had in the past where I would talk about something actionable, something either a piece of software, a piece of hardware, maybe a little bit of both, or maybe an actual tool of some kind. Like I've even talked about tactical flashlights in the past. Something that you can use that you can kind of go away from this episode or walk away from this episode saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to do this. And so I'm really glad to bring this segment back. And the first one I want to talk about is a pretty important little piece of hardware and software, really, that I think more people want to get on board with. I've talked about YubiKeys. That's YubiKey, in the past. And I think that these are phenomenal. They look like flash drives. They're not really flash drives. And what they are, it's a security device that uses, varying forms of encryption or interacts with varying forms of encryption you could plug it into a USB port, or if you have the YubiKey, Neo, you can actually interact with NFC with your phone but particularly with USB keys where it can like lock your computer. Or it can keep you from getting access to like your one-time PIN codes and everything. It's a great security device, to have. That way, so what would happen is that you would have to, if you wanted to log into your computer, you'd need to know your password or PIN or whatever, but you'd also have to have your YubiKey plugged in. Now, Windows 10 kind of allows for this with, YubiKey particularly has an app that in the Windows Store, like YubiKey for Windows 10, that allows you to do it. But I've talked about this, maybe it was on Patreon, might not have been on a Prime episode. It doesn't really work very well because you could still get access to your computer even if you don't have your YubiKey. Like you could just use your PIN. It doesn't work as kind of a second factor way to unlock your PC. And that makes it kind of pointless to me. But there is third-party software out there that's been around for a while where you could use a YubiKey where the YubiKey has to be plugged into the computer for you to be able to get into your operating system. Or this might be more appealing to other people because YubiKeys can cost anywhere between $40 to $60. You could use any old USB drive you have, and the software will convert it into acting kind of like a YubiKey to where you have to have it plugged in. And then once you're logged in, I mean, you could take it back out and, it wouldn't be an issue, but to log in every time you would need to have it plugged in. And some of the software allows for, you to do backups around that. Say like if, the USB key or the USB drive that you used, was damaged or something like that. I mean, one of the advantages of a YubiKey is they're practically indestructible. They're waterproof. They're, almost crush proof. I mean, or what do they call it? Shock proof, all these different things. As to where a lot of flash drives that might not be the case, but this might be something for you to look into. I put links in the show notes to get access to go to the websites that offer a lot of this. There's one called USB Raptor, which Raptor is totally free, but it's a little harder to set up. Then there's one called I'm guessing Rojos, even though it's kind of spelled like Rojas, but Rojos Logon Key, which that costs about $30 to set that up. And then there's one called Predator, which costs $10. If you're more of the technical sort, I recommend using USB Raptor to set this up. And this will work with a YubiKey or, like I said, an old flash drive that you have. So either use USB Raptor or just go ahead and spend the $30 for the Rojos Logon Key. And the software will walk you through, or at least with Rojos, the software will walk you all the way through it. I think Rojos also works with Mac OS. So that might be intriguing for you as well, but it definitely works with Windows. I think it's pretty cool to have a second factor setup for even logging onto your computer. To me, it's a no-brainer, especially today. And if you can do it with your YubiKey, and then your YubiKey also happens to have all your, your one-time PIN codes and everything logged into it, or quote unquote saved on it. I'm being very basic in how I describe this. That's just a beautiful little security setup. And USB Raptor is open source. Rojos is not, so that might be a concern for you. But it's not like you're really trying to stop the NSA here. You're just trying to stop, kind of your run-of-the-mill person from just logging onto your computer. Certainly it would stop a lot of your more everyday kind of malicious hackers, which I call crackers. I think hackers are heroes, but somebody's doing something malicious that often gets attributed in the mainstream media as hacking. There's been a term for that for 20 years. It's called, or even longer. It's called crackers. So yeah, I mean, that's really what you're going to be taking on here. But I have instructions. There's a link for instructions on how to set all of this up. Obviously, there's no way I could say it all over audio. It wouldn't even make sense to do it that way. But having a second factor authentication to even log onto your computer, like I said, I mean, that's brilliant security to have. Just make sure, I would recommend going to the YubiKey because they're so indestructible. But make sure you're looking into backup solutions for that when you're doing it. So check those out. Links are in the show notes. Set up a USB security key. Absolutely. Whoa. Hey. All right. I want to tell you about, I mentioned the Bitcoin price earlier. I didn't mention Zcash. I like to mention Zcash all the time. All kinds of crypto. If you want to keep your eyes on cryptocurrencies and what's happening in the blockchain space in general, there's one website I want you to check out, cryptocompare.com. Cryptocompare.com. I mean, it's such a great resource for all. I mean, even if you're looking for, speaking about looking for a tool of the week, looking for great software, great wallets, they can help you, or, there's reviews there, for all of the different wallets and everything. It's just a great way to keep an eye on cryptocurrencies. So cryptocompare.com, and I thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech.
Tech history.
Woo, tech history, where we talk about the history of tech. And I'll tell you, this is a story I've been sitting on for weeks that I've been dying to talk about, because something else has apparently died. And that is, the claim anyway, is MP3s. Well, why don't we just, I mean, MP3s, this is like it's not the only sound file type out there, obviously, but it is definitely the most well-known, is one perhaps with one of the longest histories of them all. So we're kind of talking about the future, or maybe the lack thereof, of MP3, but I think it's important to discuss, and I'm going to cut to some audio right here to tell you what exactly does this mean. What is the death of the MP3?
That's right. Rest in peace to the MP3, and this according to its creators, who say that the digital audio format has lost relevance in a world of new technology. Now, the Fraunhofer Institute for Integrated Circuits, part of the German research body which funded MP3s, has terminated its licensing program for certain MP3-related patents after almost 2 decades. The Institute said that while the MP3 is still popular with consumers, it has been taken over by more efficient audio codecs with more advanced features. In other words, a shift away from the technology looks inevitable. Now, the MP3 rose to prominence in the late 1980s and is credited with revolutionizing the way we all listen to music by reducing file sizes by as much as 95%. Now, in a statement from the Institute, most state-of-the-art media services such as streaming or TV and radio broadcasting use modern ISO MPEG codecs such as AAC, Advanced Audio Coding, or in the future, MPEG-H. Those can deliver more features and a higher audio quality at much lower bit rates compared to MP3. But keep in mind, it's not a major loss for the MP3 founders, as Fraunhofer IIS also helped create AAC files, which are now predominantly used in iTunes, YouTube, Nintendo, Nokia, and other music audio systems. In other words, they're not looking back, they're moving forwards. And MP3s, they're just going the ways of DVDs, Blackberries, VCRs, Betamax, CDs, Circuit City, Kmart, name it. They're all becoming a thing of the past. From Modern Wall Street, I'm James Sweeney.
All right. So what's the reality here? The stories that were getting shared around, and again, this is almost a month ago, and the date or the time frame, that being May of 2017, is a very important one that I'll describe in a second. So, but the story going, what everybody was saying was nothing's going to, MP3s won't work anymore. What are we going to do? We have AAC, or we have A's, or HEAAC plus, or whatever. Yeah, there's so many different ones now. Or there's, OGG Vorbis, right? Which that's been around for a while. That's the open source kind of alternative to MP3. Or there's FLAC, right? If you're into a lossless, MP3. Now, understand, like you said, MP3 has been around since the 80s. The entire protocol was finalized in 1992, 91, 92. 92, I think, is when it was, really in. And MP3s, MP3 players, a lot of people don't realize this also. There were MP3 players before the iPod. Okay. Even though the iPod was certainly what put the MP3, on the map, and what made MP3 players a force to be reckoned with, for about a decade, really up until the iPhone and, the iPhone and Android. The MP3 is not dead. Okay. Let's just get that right out of the way. This thing is not dead. MP3s are still going to be around. You're still going to have MP3. I mean, there's still going to be, well, there might not be traditional MP3 players, but again, most people don't even use those. I totally support the people that do. I think that's wonderful. I know like, Cory Doctorow has a particular MP3 player that he loves. So what's happening here is just that, yeah, they're not, was it Fraunhofer? They're not going to offer, okay, which they're kind of in control of the development of MP3 and the kind of the distribution, of the protocol itself. They're not going to offer out, really the ability maybe for new players, certain new players to be released. So it's not really dead. But why did this happen in the first place? The MP3 is still, I mean, like, you know, like we've been talking about, you go to torrent sites, most of the albums that you can get, kind of like Tokyo Motor Fist, are probably going to be an MP3, either MP3 or FLAC, right? If you're into more of a lossy or a lossless, which means that there's no loss in sound, because MP3s, and kind of what they're talking about where there's better compression abilities, MP3s arguably cut out a lot of the finer sounds, say in a song. Okay. As to where FLAC, okay, which is what free lossless audio codec, FLAC, even though it compresses it smaller than what an actual digital song would be, you know, say if you're recording it right to a computer, like if you had a guitar hooked up and, you know, it would be huge. Or like if it was a WAV file, which is also lossless, means you don't lose any of the frequency of the song. You know, a WAV file for a song could be 25, 30, 50 meg. I mean, it could be crazy. As to where with FLAC, or I mean, it could be hundreds of megs. You know, it could be ridiculously large. Yeah. It'd be pretty big. I can't remember the last time I saw an actual song in a WAV file. So as to where a FLAC can kind of break it down to more like 10, 15 meg, maybe for the average song, and an MP3 can be anywhere between 3 to 9 megabytes, depending upon what's the audio quality that you have it set for. Okay. Now me personally, and this is something I don't think that, or I think the industry knows, but they ignore and they try to keep selling you on shit. There's the argument that you can or can't hear certain frequencies, and that like the frequency range that an MP3 could deliver music to you that you could actually hear is within human hearing, and anything outside of it was meaningless. Now there's people who say, no, that's not true. There's all kinds of things that you can hear, and all kind of frequencies that you pick up, even if you don't really notice that you're hearing. And so with MP3s, you know, there's a lot of, and I say this with affection, there's a lot of music snobs, okay, that think the MP3 is just anathema, like it's Satan incarnate. You know, it's just this terrible, terrible thing. I don't agree. And understand, I am a music lover. Okay. I have a music collection, you know, in the hundreds of thousands of songs. Okay. I mean, I have a huge music collection and I love music, but a 192K, all right. And I know most people like encode theirs at 320K or something on a lot of torrent sites, but a 192K MP3 does me just fine. You know, and now 128K MP3 on the other hand, I start hearing like when somebody's hitting a cymbal or something, you know, or the certain drum rolls going down. Yeah, you're hearing some art, what they call sound artifacts, where that's not how that's supposed to sound. But a 192K MP3 does me wonderfully. And that's how I listen to most of my music. And I don't really feel like I'm missing the point of the song anyway. I can understand the arguments that maybe there's certain sounds you're not hearing, certain brilliance that doesn't come through. But I mean, that goes so far as to say that even digital keeps you from hearing everything that you're supposed to be hearing. And they want you to go with, like with vinyl records, and they want everything done on analog, even though a lot of vinyl records today aren't recorded in analog. They're recorded digitally and then they're put onto analog, right? So, but I understand all of these arguments, and I've said this myself. Like I've listened, you know, one of my favorite bands of all time, Deep Purple. I've listened to quadraphonic Deep Purple albums, and I've never heard, and you could toss Dolby Surround 8.1 or Atmos or whatever at me. Nothing has sounded better than hearing Burn on quadraphonic by Deep Purple. Like that, I mean, that was a life-changing experience, but that technology's dead. You know, that's from the 70s. Or even a little before. I mean, quadraphonic was this, 4-speaker setup, and you mastered the album to work that way. Oh, there was some brilliant shit. Okay. But, a lot of that's come and gone. Bottom line is the MP3 does just fine for me. Now, what is really happening here? Why is the MP3 dead? Well, here's the problem. It's not like, so they're saying like, how the Fraunhofer, whatever group, they're not licensing out patents anymore for the MP3s. It's because they can't. It's because the patents, like they said, it's been around for 20 years. The patents are dying. They died in April 2017. Like they've come to an end. MP3 is out of patent. We talked about this probably about a year ago, because that's when some of the patents from like 91 were starting to, come up, and it's like, oh, well, then MP3 is going to be, effectively open source. So companies can't make money off of MP3s in that way anymore. That's why the MP3 is quote unquote dead, is because it's out of patent. Now it has the potential to be, effectively open source. They don't control MP3 anymore. That's why it's dead. It's not like they give a shit about, whether AAC is technically better in how much sound it can compress into a much smaller file than even MP3 does, which AAC, like AAC Plus, you can get the same quality of like a 192, MP3 inside of like 64K. I mean, and it's like, some songs aren't even a meg. A megabyte in size. It's pretty incredible. And it does work fairly well. I mean, I've messed around with this stuff. Like I said, I take music very seriously. Okay. But, I do like the standardized, I'm just so used to MP3s. And like, there was a moment where I wanted to convert all my MP3s to Ogg Vorbis, but that would have killed the songs. I mean, you can only convert these things so many times before, really you start getting more of, like I said, those artifacts where you're getting these strange, like, kind of lavish mouth noise sounds or something. So inside joke there. But yeah, the MP3 is not dead. It's still going to, most of your music services that allow you to upload MP3s, like say, Microsoft Groove or Google Play Music All Access or whatever, they still take MP3s, and they're going to take MP3s forever. And software, most like Power Amp on Android or something, if you play something localized, or you play like 432 player, that's another music app that I really like. They're all going to play MP3s fine. The MP3 is not fucking dead. That was such easy clickbait for all of these fucking tech shows, or not tech shows, but tech journalists to run with. And I was like, stop, guys, because everybody's going to think, people are going to panic. What am I going to do with my MP3s? You just use them like you always have. And if it ever gets to a day where you really do need to convert them, I'm pretty sure whatever service you're working with, be it Apple Music, and of course that could turn out to be a disaster that we know of historically has happened. But whatever music service you're working with, they will probably do a music match kind of setup where, they'll give you the converted version in the new file format or something from MP3. But no, the MP3 is not going anywhere. The MP3 is probably still going to be used. You're going to be torrenting MP3s, I guarantee you, like 20 years from now. I mean that. I'll be back with
Babylon 5 ended a great war and united 100 alien races in peace. Danger didn't die. It just went underground, with new heroes and new evils to carry the torch.
We need to make sure they all understand we will not be intimidated.
What is wrong with you people?
We have to protect him against himself.
It's an entire new season of Babylon 5 with all new episodes.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5.
The climax.
Adam West, the actor who played Batman in the 1960s series, died Friday night in Los Angeles. He was 88 years old. A representative said he died after a short battle with leukemia. West's portrayal of the superhero, along with his alter ego Bruce Wayne, made it difficult for him to get other roles. He worked throughout his career, but his options remained limited because of his association with the comic book character.
For 3 seasons, Adam West played Batman on TV. It was only 3 seasons, which is shocking because of the impact
it's my
it's had.
childhood.
Now all 120 episodes of the classic series are being released on DVD and Blu-ray, along with tons of bonus features.
Beyond.
They've also been digitally remastered.
Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Adam West.
So great to see you.
Howdy, Steve. Lisa, how are you?
Beyond happy
good to see you guys.
You're looking good. You're hanging in there, huh?
Well, I feel pretty damn good, yes. Lordy, it's nice to see you two again. It's been a few years.
A couple of years.
You know that you were like my babysitter in the afternoons growing up. Like, I felt like I spent every afternoon with you. You are Batman to me.
Were you turned out okay?
Yeah, as far as I can tell.
The jury's still out, Adam.
Yes.
We're waiting on this thing.
Well, I'm delighted. You know, people say that, and And, you know, as you become a senior superhero, you hear more and more of these stories that, you know, you grew up with me and maybe I babysat.
Yeah.
And I'm still doing that for your kids.
Yeah.
Yes, and it still goes on, and this is Batman for fun. And you know, as the feature films came out later, it's more dark and it's more foreboding. It's almost like film noir. You guys were having a good time.
Well, we weren't scary. We had fun, yes. As a matter of fact, we designed and did the show on several levels. It was a social satire, theater of the absurd for the adults, and for the children, it was high adventure and scientific stuff and morality, and it was wonderful fun.
Yeah, I have a question. You probably get asked this a lot, but I'm really curious to the answer. You got this role, and it was a huge role. In fact, you beat out Lyle Wagner. Was the other guy who was up for this? Am I correct?
Well, I'm not sure, Steve, because I've heard that, and I did see a test at one time. But I would hate to say that a fellow actor didn't get it because I was better in any way.
You don't want to say beat out. Maybe that's the wrong phrase, but you ended up with it. It is a blessing and a curse because you cannot escape the fact that you played this iconic role. That's the blessing. The curse is you cannot escape that you played this role.
What did you say, Lisa?
Were you typecast? Were you typecast? I think it's
it is. Thank you for cutting through it.
Yes, that's what I'm here
but Steve,
for.
you're right.
He has not lost a thing here.
It is. You can't run around 24/7 in a cape and a cowl and a funny pair of tights and fighting crime. I mean, you're crazy to do that.
Yes.
So it was a comedy that did typecast me. And it was kind of desperate until I sobered up. No, it was. It wasn't easy for a few years. And I went out and I did theater, the Mark Taper Forum. I did regional theater, anything I could.
To try
and I did so many really dumb movies. I mean, awful movies in which I did terrible things.
Well, you started playing like psychotic characters.
Well, yeah, I did awful mean guys.
Yes.
And then I even was in drag.
Well, that's fun.
What?
That's fun on a Saturday night, right?
You didn't tell me.
Oh, she's strong. Adam, and you babysat her. I blame you.
Yeah,
I know.
It's your fault. This is how you turned out.
I didn't do much of a job.
Any advice for Ben Affleck as he takes on the next cape?
My darling, I would never dream of giving another actor advice unless I'm directing him. Now, I feel that unlike a lot of the talk that's going around, that he'll be marvelous. You know, he's a very good actor. And everyone who plays Batman brings their own little kind of, I don't know, they cook with it and bring something fresh.
Their own panache.
Yeah, panache is a good word, yes. Another panache, please.
The voice is still you've done a lot of voiceovers in your career. Are you still doing them?
Yeah, I'm still doing voiceovers. And as a matter of fact, I did a character with Rob Lowe for a new show. And Rob plays Dazzle, and I play his father, Razzle.
Really? Dazzle and Razzle?
That's what
Razzle, Dazzle.
There we go. And I do Family Guy, and I've got a show called What You Got for the Money with Adam West. So I'm busy, you know.
And you were also born to do comedy.
For a geezer, that's pretty good.
All right, Batman, the complete television series is now on DVD and Blu-ray, as we mentioned.
So I assume you got the point. That was one of the last interviews done with Adam West, who passed away on June 9th, 2017, last night. And I have, I mentioned it at the top of the show that we would be talking about it during the climax. I dedicated this entire episode to him. I am going to try and get through the segment, but I think it's important to talk about an actor, and I've had, this has been too often on Sovryn Tech, where in the past, couple of years, 2016, of course, was crazy. 2017 is on a fair trend itself. where I've had to talk about, kind of childhood heroes, but not just childhood heroes, because I actually, unlike other people, I don't dump the shit that I was into as a child into the wastebasket. I actually, I hold on to it because I understand, and I like to keep in touch with that part of me and why I was into those things, and I can understand myself in that way. And fortunately, I guess, and I know not everybody gets to do this. Not everybody gets out of childhood with their imagination intact. I'm not boasting. I just feel I'm someone that did, and I'm thankful for that. Yeah, this one sucks. This is one of the bigger ones for a lot of reasons. And, you just listening to that interview, that was bad. That was him at, I guess he might've been 86 or 87, because Adam West died at the age of 88. Definitely had a full life. I might talk about that a bit here. Okay. He's still captivating to listen to. Like, this guy's work was not done. I don't think I need to give him much of an introduction. Everybody knows that he was Batman. I've said countless times on Sovryn Tech, be it on the Prime show or on a Patreon show or whatever, he's my Batman. He is the Batman that I grew up with, that I aspired to. I mean, I've been reading the Batman comics since I was like 6. I've been reading them forever. Okay. But at the end of the day, when I thought about Batman, I fucking thought about Adam West. He still had so much to offer. I mean, I was just listening to that audio with you, and like, I was captivated at what he had to say. And you know what? Just real quick, his assessment of Ben Affleck, he was fucking right. Ben Affleck turned out in Batman v Superman, however you feel about that movie, okay? And I don't mind if you hated it. Ben Affleck did just fine and dandy. He did marvelous, just like Adam West said, as Batman. He called that shot. Because the guy knows. Just a brilliant guy. Ooh. So here's one of the real pities with this, okay? I reviewed back in, I think this was October 2016. Maybe it was November. Maybe it was in November when the episode finally came out that I did it. I reviewed, Warner Brothers, DC Warner Brothers, came out with The Return of the Caped Crusaders, which was an animated feature. And this is very popular, very well received. I sure as fucking hell received it very well. It was like a sequel to the 1966 Batman series that Adam West did for, like they said, 3 years. And they got Adam West to do the voice of Batman. They got Burt Ward to do the voice of Robin. They got Julie Newmar to do Catwoman. I mean, they made this as much. I don't need to re-review the film. You can look up, my review of it, because I loved it. I was almost in tears watching it. It was so beautiful to see a genuinely well done, respectful, to the source, paid up the fidelity, baby, to Batman 66 that was there. Now, I said then that we already knew it was so popular, they're going to do a sequel. In fact, William Shatner was going to voice Two-Face, which Two-Face was never in the original Batman, was never in the Batman 66 TV series. So I thought that was really cool. First off, to have William Shatner and Adam West, two of my top heroes, growing up, understand. It was really like, who were the big influences on me? Captain Kirk, Batman, that Adam West Batman, and then of course Ric Flair. Woo! Those were the biggies. So to have Adam West and William Shatner playing off of each other in a new animated feature based off of as a sequel to Batman 66 and a sequel to Return of the Caped Crusaders, which fortunately will come out this year, 2017, probably this fall or maybe even in the winter. That fortunately will come out. Adam West completed that project. Thanks Satan for that. Really glad to, that's going to be magical to see that happen, but now it's going to be filled with a lot of sadness for a lot of reasons. They were talking about in that interview how finally Batman, the Batman 66 TV series was getting released on DVD and Blu-ray and digital HD. That was, again, that was like 2015 there, 2014, 2015, that interview. The show came out in 66. What the fuck took so long? Let me tell you what took so long. The rights for that show were just so locked up in so much limbo in Hollywood that nobody could release anything about it. Do you know why in 2016 that they finally released that movie I mentioned, Return of the Caped Crusader, that animated film, even though obviously people were hankering for it. Do you know why, DC? One of their most popular titles right now is actually Batman 66. That's the name of the comic book. It's awesome. Do you know why DC is finally able to more do Batman 66? It's because all the fucking intellectual property, all the copyright finally got cleared up. And so now DC can actually make shit about Batman. But do you realize this stuff's popular, and it's not a generational thing, because, you know, there's a generational thing of like what decade, like decades, like right now the 90s are popular again, right? That's why Jurassic Park is such a big deal. That's why there's all these remakes of various movies from the 90s or sequels or something. You know, and you could say a few years ago, it was the 80s that was the big, you know, hot and happening thing. And so you were doing sequels and remakes of 80s movies and whatever. Or, you know, maybe even now, but you have like Stranger Things and whatever. It's not the 60s time. Like it's really not. The 60s time was actually back in the 90s, like when you got a remake of the Avengers. And I don't mean the bullshit from Marvel. I'm talking about, you know, the old Patrick McNee. Okay. You know, Steed and Peele, right? You know, Steed and Mrs. Peele, you know, the original, the British Avengers, the classic TV show. Okay. Which that was a Sean Connery movie. I can't believe that's a Sean Connery movie. The movie is so bad. But anyway, you know, that's when the 60s were back, was in the 90s. So, like, my point in saying this, okay, is that people have been hungry for more Batman 66, for more of that bright night instead of the dark night, for more of the fun, the sexiness. And every time I've talked about Batman 66, I've always said that's the best part. In fact, Adam West just confirmed it. What I've been saying for years is that show was a multi-layered show. It had something for everybody, for adults, for kids, or whatever. And that show, if you're an adult, that show is fucking sexy, which is one of the reasons that I, you know, still absolutely love it. But my point that I'm trying to make to you is that Adam West, while he has done varying things over the years, I want to talk about some of those. Adam West could have been appreciating a resurgence, maybe as animated films, like the success of Return of the Caped Crusader, and I'm sure what'll be the success of the new movie with Two-Face, bringing Two-Face excitingly into the Batman 66 universe. You know, he could have been enjoying a lot of renewed popularity. He could have been enjoying some new paychecks, you know, for his work as Batman. Yeah, it's unfortunate he got typecasted. That definitely happened, you know, but holy shit, like he could have lived it up on that. Some people get to live this shit up. He could have been writing new Batman 66 novels, but no, because of dumb-ass laws, because of dumbass concepts like intellectual property, this guy that made Batman, I mean, like Adam West is as quintessential to the creation, or to the popularity, I should say, not the creation, the popularity of Batman, as Bob Kane, Bill Finger, you know, go down the list. Christopher Nolan, not that Nolan necessarily helped with Batman's popularity, but, you know, Tim Burton, all of them. Adam West is quintessential to Batman being what he is today, to appreciating the legacy that Batman has today and the popularity. And he could have been living off of that, but fuck no, because of stupid IP, because, you know, because all the rights are here, the rights are there, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and we as fans couldn't even enjoy this shit. I had to, you know, for years, the only way I've been able to watch Batman 66, I had to download, and, you know, thanks Satan for torrents, I had to download rips from TV Land, from the fucking, you know, network TV Land. I mean, such piss poor conversions. Okay. Oh, it's the worst. Yeah, I blame government for that shit. I blame the fucking monopoly use of force. Absolutely. And it fucked up. I mean, it didn't allow him to really, I mean, fortunately in the last couple of years, like, yeah, Batman 66 has been on one hell of a rise. I mean, a real rise. You know, as far as popularity goes, the comic book's been huge. Like I said, that movie was huge. I'm so thankful for that, you know, and even in the 90s, I mean, he still got to do some stuff. Like he was in of course, what is largely considered the greatest animated show of all time, that being Batman, the Animated Series. He got to play the Gray Ghost, which was the character, what was his name? Simon Trent. It was Simon Trent. It was the character that you find out Batman, or at least in Batman, the Animated Series, that Batman in that based or a lot of his persona as a crime fighter was on when he was a kid. When Bruce Wayne was a kid, he watched The Gray Ghost, and thankfully they brought in beautifully Adam West to voice the Gray Ghost. And Adam West has done other stuff, some of it big, some not. He played the mayor of Quahog, of course, in Family Guy, which was mentioned in that interview. He was even, I remember he was in the 90s, there was a very short-lived show on Fox. It was the Pauly Shore show. And he even got to sit in the Batmobile in that. I remember, I thought that was awesome. That was the whole reason I watched the Pauly Shore show, was because his neighbor was Adam West in it. Was it Blue Water Comics or was it Antarctic Press? I think it was Blue Water Comics. They did about a year run with a comic book called The Misadventures of Adam West, which was kind of Adam West being Adam West, sort of as James Bond, but kind of being sort of kitschy, kind of, and a little cheesy. I mean, it's a very fun comic series if you ever want to pick it up. I mean, it is lots of fun, lots of little Batman-isms in it, the whole thing. I mean, Adam West was, even as typecasted, I mean, he was a comedic genius, in my opinion. But, it's just like with William Shatner. Fine. I mean, William Shatner's done other things, Boston Legal, TJ Hooker and whatever. But I mean, if you're going to get typecasted, holy fuck, how about you be typecasted as one of the greatest characters in literary or, in fictional history? Like with William Shatner, Captain Kirk. With Adam West, fucking Batman. I mean, you'll always have that. That's huge. So I'm kind of pissed off because there was so much more opportunity for me as a fan to experience Adam West at his best. I'm not saying he ever did anything half-ass. By no fucking means did he ever do that. But I could have